I have no name. This may seem strange accident of nature, but I represent to you the 98 unidentified Confederate soldiers who are buried in a mass grave near this granite marker. How did they get here? They came from far away from many states. At that time, Old Main on East Alabama Male College was a Confederate hospital. It housed about 400 wounded soldiers at one time.
My name is John Jackson Harper. I'm considered the founder of the city of Auburn. You won't find my picture in any history books, the libraries, the museums, but a university stands where I helped lay out the muddy streets so long ago. My likeness may be gone forever, but my dream lives on.
Everybody has a story from the time that they're little, especially in our group, and I think that it's, I think whenever I got into it, I didn't really realize this, but the longer I stay in it, the more I realize it's not really places that are haunted, it's people. People are haunted. And so if you can do anything to help those people and maybe help yourself in the process, then why not? The house that I grew up in, from the moment we walked in the door, had activity going on, and the older I got, the worse it got. You know, slamming doors, exploding light bulbs, you know, big, heavy footprints, dragging across the floor, you name it, it happened in the house. People would call your name, and it would sound like a member of your family. Like I'd hear my mom say my name several times. And the more she said it, the louder she got and the madder she sounded. And then the phone would ring and I'd pick it up and it'd be my mom. And she'd be like, "What are you doing?" And she'd be at work. You know, my brother left the house in a towel one time because he heard her calling and he knew she was at work because he just got off the phone with her. So, and it got pretty heavy and dark, you know, the older I got. And that's just the beginning.
I've been around it pretty much all my life. My grandparents' house was haunted. And I pretty much grew up in that place with my grandma always talking to the ghosts and the ghosts around the place. And then when I was about 15, I saw Ghostbusters, and that was it. I said, I can do that. So at 15, me and a friend of mine, we grabbed our boombox tape recorder with a giant video camera and went out and started doing this. So I've been doing this since I was 15.
Parapsychology is most of it, it falls right into the field of paranormal science. A lot of mediumship, clairvoyance, sensitivity, all those words or titles, I guess you could say, you know, are given to people that say that they can see, smell, hear, communicate with spirits to some degree. Doesn't mean anything. You have it. You have it. You have it. Everybody has it to a certain degree. You know, it doesn't matter how small or how great it is in one person. It really has to do with the situation or the environment that you're in. We have what we call environmental haunts that play a huge part in, you know, paranormal activity, and the aspect of it boils down to the minerals that are in the ground. So you stick somebody who's got some hypersensitivity to EMF into a large building that's pumping out tons and tons and tons of unshielded electromagnetic field due to their wiring, and they're going to have an episode of some sort. And if they can't explain it immediately, they're going to chalk it up to something that may be paranormal to a certain degree. But that's where the parapsychology aspect comes in, because we do know that people are hypersensitive to these kinds of things. It's just not necessarily physically documented yet. There's no doctor of
Right, the paranormal field is actually listed as a parascience.
Right.
And a parascience is a science that's not quite yet.
It's based on theory.
Yeah, it's a theorized science, you know. So it's actually not even considered a viable field. But in parascience, you use all of those viable fields. We use chemistry. We test for lead when we go places. We use geology. We test the soil. We test for
Water tables,
yeah,
electromagnetic fields.
yeah.
We're electricians, geologists,
Yeah.
doctors, psychologists.
Plumbers.
Plumbers.
I mean, that you will find most people with more than one haunted story, it will have followed them everywhere. It's like they're a lightning rod or a big light, and the ghost, spirits, energy, whatever you want to call it, are like little moths to that flame. And everywhere they go and everywhere they live and everywhere they visit for long periods of time, you're going to have some kind of activity. And it may not be a full frontal ghost standing there in front of you saying boo, you know, but you're going to have some kind of something. And whether you have the equipment ready to pick it up, you know, you may, you know, I mean, you may turn this off tonight and play it back, and you may hear a voice on there.
Generally, when you're working with a family like hers, like Michelle's, and we run into this a lot, you find that the issue of sensitivity or possible potential clairvoyance, I guess you could say, it does have a tendency to run in families. And it's not uncommon. It's not as uncommon as what a lot of people think. It actually happens a lot. I mean, you see it in small children. Their parents are like, we don't know why we see it. Our kids see it, you know, and sometimes even their animals see it. But, you know, when people or, you know, beings tend to collaborate together in some way, shape, or form, they take on those characteristics of everybody else. It's not like, you know, when you work with a group like what we work with, everybody's different coming into this group. But fundamentally, everybody collaborating and understanding where we come from makes us all, without even saying a word, be able to go into a room of people, you know, that may be having something, you know, some type of potential paranormal activity, and saying, you know, somebody in this room is going to understand where you're coming from, because we've all had these different experiences, one way or another. It takes a very, I guess you could say, dedicated individual to be able to do what we do, because most of what we research, one, is in theory, two, it's based on no fundamental principle whatsoever. It's all based on just, you know, reports and claims and possibilities, and there's nothing that's there. And the field of paranormal science is so virginal that there's a gray area for everything. There's nothing that's set in stone. So we rely on those theories and psychology to a great degree, just to be able to, one, document any type of strange or possible paranormal activity based on the equipment that we have and scientific techniques and methods that we use, and two, being able to add to that the psychology of being able to make people understand, look, this is what we've captured, so what you're telling us doesn't mean anything. This is really happening to you, and this is the possibility as to why that is. So it's a broad range of a lot of different things, but that's one of the things that makes our group very different from a lot of other groups that are out there, is that we, first of all, want to help people. We're not in it for money or glory or anything like that. We don't even care about that stuff. We just want to be able to answer some of our own personal questions, and hopefully find other people that are out there that have stories and, you know, issues like we do. Or there was a military police unit from Fort Rucker that called us in, and they had an episode where one of their MPs was attacked by something in the cemetery. And up until that point, when he was attacked, he was not a believer at all. He didn't believe in anything paranormal. There was no such thing as ghosts. There was no boogeyman, nothing like that. And we got out there, we did the one investigation, and that was all it took. We were able to clarify some of his reports. We were able to give him some evidence and say, look, you know, this is what your potential problem is. You know, this is a possible answer for what's going on. And that was all it took, you know. And as a matter of fact, I think he was the one that said is all it takes is just one time. It's just one time to have an episode, and it'll change your mind. It'll make
There's
you
nothing we can show you evidence-wise that's going to make you believe. And just the opposite, it also goes the other way. If you believe, I can sit here and debunk every little thing about it, but if you believe, you're going to believe it anyway.
That's the parapsychology part of it. You know, is just being able to figure out what this person's personality is like, what their issues are, positive and negative, and then work with that.
You know, we're not telling you, oh, you know, you see dead people. It's not necessarily the case, you know, stuff you, but you may have a hypersensitivity to whatever ions or whatever electricity or whatever's going on with them. You may have this hypersensitivity to them, and that's why you feel haunted.
Or awkward.
Or, yeah.
Or any of those general sensations that come along with that.
Yeah. Itchy.
Me and John Mark are both hypersensitive to EMF. And so we can tell the difference when there's some type of electrical field that's around, as opposed to being in an area where there is no electricity and still being able to feel that. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we sense ghosts or see dead people like she said. It just means that we're able somehow or another to be able to pick it up, you know, in some way, shape, or form. It's an electromagnetic field, which is basically just a electrical impulse or frequency that's being generated, whether it's a natural field or a man-made field.
Whatever sensitivity there is and that kind of thing is not used unless it's backed up by evidence.
And we have some different pieces of equipment that we use. We have dowsing rods. And the laser grid, typically what we use a laser grid for is, and this is actually just one of those little fun house, playhouse deals, but the way we use it is we bring up the points where they're really close together, and then we turn the lights out. We put a night vision camera behind it, so when something actually moves through the grid, we could see it. We'll see the breakup in the laser. But we also use electrical equipment that's actually calibrated to be able to do that as well.
Right. Like EMF detectors, electromagnetic field detectors that electricians use.
Okay, is that the dial kind of?
Yeah, you can get them in digital or analog,
Cool.
and we use those. And you know, like I said, that's how we found the unshielded line up under this place. Was I had 3 different ones, and they were just going off like crazy.
Yeah.
And they were
So,
not.
yeah, this is the one we use a lot in the way of responses because it's got the needle on it and it tends to bounce, pretty well.
Cool.
But if you get around something that's electric, like he was just looking at, any outlets that are on that have power, they'll register. And the other side of that is that what we were talking about a while ago, when there's EMF in an area and there's no electricity, that's when it gets weird. Because we actually have devices that are calibrated where you can dial in to a certain frequency, whether it's like a cellular wave or microwave or something, similar. Go ahead, throw it up there. It should come on. Gotta get a little bit closer to it. Okay.
It did.
Did
It went up
Did
to
it register?
to the middle.
Okay. Yours is the one you've got is probably a lot more sensitive. Yours will probably register. Yeah, see how it's going up? And that's how we kind of determine whether it's something, that's natural or unnatural to some degree. So, but that's what those are. And we use those, not just that one, but we use all of them, to try to get responses from whatever might be around or whatever.
Before we do an investigation, I'll go to places like that and look for that. So I can say, when you're using your EMF detector, if it goes off here, this is why. Lighting will give it off. And it'll actually feel like we went into one house in Abbeville. That you walked in the place and it gave off. The minute you walked in, you had a 0.5 on the scale. And certain areas it would get up to 30 point something, 20 point something due to track lighting, unshielded. And the worst of all was this guy had a old clock digital radio next to his bed. It was giving off 300. The people who are saying, the cell phones that give you cancer and everything, that electromagnetic field, that anything above 0.5 it's considered dangerous. He's sleeping right next to something that's 300 points haunted.
When you turn it on, the fan comes on and it pulls in all the, you can hear it come on. You hear it. Basically what it does is it pulls air inside there, and once the air comes through, all the little positive or negative particles that are in the air get stuck to this tray, this little magnetic tray that's in there. And then it'll tell you what it is on the positive or the negative side. And ions contribute to paranormal activity because it's basically static discharge that's in the air. So it's basically just electricity that's in the air. General rule with EVP sessions are that you ask a question, you wait about 15, 20 seconds or so, 10, 20 seconds, and then the next person can ask a question. And that just gives whatever's available the opportunity to respond. And sometimes if you hear something like a tap or something like that that sounds like it's in the building, ask it to do it again and see if it'll happen again, just to see if it's something that you can actually get to respond to you that way. When those devices actually go off, and they go off in reference to a question, like a yes or no question, that's when you've probably got some type of electromagnetic field that's not necessarily explainable. Right. And we've had instances like that where we actually use our some of our devices' electromagnetic fields to be able to. We'll have an EVP session, and we'll ask, if you're here, can you come over here? Can you touch this box? Can you, get close to it? We've had several episodes that are like that where the box will actually register that there's something there. And so we use that as a yes or no reference to our questions or the possibility of. But when they're consistent, it's not a coincidence. A gentleman had contacted me and said that his son, who was 4 at the time, was having these different issues. He would fall asleep and he would get up in the middle of the night and say that he'd seen something in his bedroom. Typically it was this dark, shadowy kind of figure, and they didn't understand why he was seeing it, and it progressively got worse. And this just so happened to happen right after he had an accident where a car had backed over. And shortly after, while he was home and recovering, is when he started to have these issues. And so they took him back to the doctor, assuming it was probably something to do with the accident, some sort of head trauma. And they couldn't find anything wrong with him. He was in perfect health. He had recovered completely without any issues, no neurological problems or anything like that, which they reassured me of, and we asked him about it again when we went in and did our initial consultation. But the interesting thing was is that when we actually went in and did the investigation, he kept having these episodes. Initially, I had just told him it was probably due to the accident, and this went on for a couple of months, and he kept reporting it to us and kept reporting it to us. So we went up there, and the first thing we found was that on the outside of the house, they had the breaker meter, which gives off an enormous amount of electromagnetic field. And he was sleeping right next to that, and there was also a breaker box on the other side of the wall that was right next to him, which puts him in something that we call a fear cage, and a lot of people use that term in the paranormal field, which basically means he's just surrounded by electromagnetic fields. And these fear cages, or this abundance of electricity, can cause hallucinations, rashes, it can cause you feeling being watched, anxiety, paranoia. It can cause you to be sick to your stomach, you name it. I mean, there's a long list of issues. We think that this is that and a combination of the accidents probably what triggered it. And so he was able to see these masses, these dark shadows. On the investigation, we didn't catch anything. He did tell us, though, that there were some problems with doors slamming and things like that. But of course, the house is old and it was being worked on and things like that. But just us being able to come in and verify this for him and tell him, look, this is as simple as putting that meter on the wall and identifying those places for him was enough for him to feel a little bit better about his situation. What we recommended was that we move him out of that area and see if that helped him. But we actually think, because he never had any issues before, we think that the accident triggered his hypersensitivity to the EMF. And that was the only explanation that we could provide for them, because we absolutely found no evidence of anything that was paranormal at all. But now we do have incidences, a lot of times we'll take cases where there is something similar to that and we do catch evidence. So then we have to pick through everything with a really fine-tooth comb and say, is it this or is it that? And sometimes we have to present that to our clients like that and say, you know, it could be this and it could be that, but we're just not sure. And those are the ones that we tend to follow very closely. And we, you know, we'll touch base with them monthly, you know, every couple of months, something like that.
Sometimes somebody just understanding what's going on with you makes a big difference, especially if you're an adolescent child or young child.
Yeah.
They see things mom and dad don't see. They have night terrors, or they see things on the playground, you know, things chase them, or they see this or that or the other. And sometimes just letting them know that, you know, there's nothing wrong with them, or, you know, and because some kids have more than just there's a boogeyman in my closet, you know, and being able to sit down with them and talk to them about it and telling them some of your own stories, or telling them stories from somebody else that you deal with, makes them not be as scared, or giving them, you know, saying it's okay to sleep with a nightlight, you know, that kind of thing. Sometimes,
Making them feel comfortable.
yeah, being able to say, I get it, you're not crazy.
That's for us to determine.
Yeah.
Like the opening line for every, you know, case we get, you're gonna think I'm crazy. No, sir, I'm not.
And did y'all do anything at Pine Hill?
It was back when I was playing in the band. We had a band show out there, and I was coming back from it. And this lady was sitting there. She was looking through the gate, just like that. And I asked her, I said, what are you doing? She said, I just saw something. She said it looked like a person. Said either they just rose up out of the ground, or they just come over the hill, turned, walked into that cedar tree, but they didn't come out on the other side.
We were out there, we were walking through the cemetery and walking through the kind of main road that's right there. I saw what looked like a woman, an older woman that was standing in front of an older looking grave. I couldn't tell you what really, like a time period of clothing. She was just there and then she was gone. And I said something to Michelle about it, and she was like, well, that's kind of weird. And I was like, yeah, that is weird, because this is the first time I've ever been in here, and that's kind of creepy to me. And when we went over there to actually look at the gravestone, it was the date that we were in the cemetery, but it was, she died, what, 100 years ago or something like that?
It's like right after the Civil War.
Something like that.
Or no, a little bit after.
And that just totally made my skin crawl.
The second floor, there was one of the coaches or something that used to jog around it. And when my dad would work late nights, he was equipment manager, I would go and I'd stay with him because I just loved it down there. Because you could get out there and you could run around the top and everything. And one time I was up there getting coffee, or I think it was hot chocolate actually. And the door, one of the doors, because they would close, and it's not like up top where it's just completely open. They have doors that separate it. And the door just opened and closed, and I shot back down there, and I was like, door open and closed by itself. And he's like, well, you know, one of the coaches or somebody that worked on that floor would run that floor, and he had a heart attack and died. And they said that they had stories of people seeing him still running that floor.
And he went to go check it, and we saw there was no light in there, and he walked out, and the door just like
Closed on them?
closed. No, that's all you did. You barely even walked by it.
Uh-huh.
That's a really, hit it pretty hard to get it to cut past that, what you call it.
Stop, yeah.
Where's the light though?
I think it's in the, no, I think it's actually inside the thing.
I think that there's a consciousness to you living and dead, okay? I think that some people make a conscious decision to say, I'm not going anywhere but right here, I'm staying here. And then I think that there are probably lesser consciousness that exist of human beings and animal beings, whatnot, that actually don't realize that they're dead. And so they're just routinely doing the same thing over and over and over again. They're not really doing anything in particular, what we call non-intelligent or residual type haunts. It's just kind of where they do the same thing over and over and over again. But these intelligent energies, or these intelligent beings, if you will, can interact with you to a certain degree. We refer to that as an intelligent haunt or an intelligent being to a certain degree. Now that's all
See,
theory.
you gotta understand scientifically. You're made of energy, right? Energy cannot be created or destroyed.
Right.
That's scientific proof. So what happens to that energy once the body shell's gone?
It's gotta go somewhere.
It's gotta go somewhere. It's gotta do something.
And the human soul approximately weighs about 8 pounds, because upon death, you instantly lose 8 pounds.